On this question, they're asking us to use a polar graph to graph this polar point, and then find 3 other polar points that are different ways to say the same point on the graph. That's what's tricky about polar coordinates. You can say the same point different ways. So let me be clear. What they're starting with is -6, comma, 235 degrees. -6, comma, 235 degrees. So how are we gonna find that? Well, it's gonna be a little tricky. Let's the first thing let's first locate it as it says, right? Use a polar graph to graph this. Okay, so -6, 235. So where's that? -6, 235. So here I brought in a polar graph right here for you. That's on the module. Right at the top of our module, Module 5 in the course, I put polar graph paper for you. It's going to be helpful to have that, print that out, or keep that on files for yourself to work on. So 235, where's 235? Well, we don't exactly have 235, do we? It's between 225 and 240. So somewhere about in the middle of those two, kind of about that direction, close to 240. You with me? 235 would be about right there, about close to that, close to 240. Okay. And what's going to happen? We're going to shoot in the opposite direction, -6. So we're going to go backwards 6. So it's a backfire, right? Remember, the negative numbers here mean a backfire 6. Well, how do you know where to do that? Well, you can tell it's going to be in this. See how we're 2 lines over from straight down, a little past 2 lines over? So from straight up, 1, 2, a little past. So we're going to go in this direction. Oops, I didn't do that too well, but make it a little bigger here for you. So it's going to be in this direction, isn't it? And how far? Well, backfire 6. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about right there. Do you see how I found that? That's going to be our original point, -6, comma 235. Right? So because we faced the 235 degree angle, right about there, 235 degrees. But then we backfired 6. So there we go. Okay, now that's the dot. That's just getting started. Now they want us to say this same location 3 different ways. There's other ways to land the cannonball in that exact spot other than saying it like this. So the first thing they want us to do is do the opposite sign on R and an angle between 0 and 360. So the opposite sign on R is going to be +6, right? Because we had -6. So notice you're going to shoot the cannonball forward 6 instead of backfiring it. Okay, well, what angle do you need? You need to turn to that angle so that you're aiming the cannonball, or the cannon, straight, and the cannonball will go out straight. Are you seeing that? So what angle is that? How do we find that angle? Well, remember, it's a backfire. So if we subtract, let me do that with a different color. If we subtract 180 degrees, if we go backwards 180 degrees, remember, halfway around is always 180. So if you backfire, the direct opposite direction from where you're facing is 180 degree rotation, isn't it? So if before the cannon was facing 235, but then it backfired, that means subtract 180. So if we take, over here, if we take 235 minus 180 degrees, we'll get 55 degrees. That means this angle here must be 55 degrees. It looks right, doesn't it? It's almost 60. Yeah, it's just 5 off of 60, like 235 is just 5 off of 240. That's right, 55 degrees. So that means if you aim the cannon at 55 degrees, right, it'll face that direction, and then you shoot +6, you'll land the cannonball in the same exact spot. That's another way to say the same spot. to land the cannonball in exactly the same spot with the opposite sign on R and an angle between 0 and 360. Now they want us to do it a third way. Same sign as the original R, so we're going to stick with the backfire, the -6, the original R. But this time we want an angle larger than 360. Well, that's pretty easy. We just take the 235 original angle they gave us, and we just add 360, right? Because if we were facing 235 before, facing this direction before, and we add 360, we go all the way around, we're going to still be facing the same direction, and a backfire of 6 will still land the cannonball at the same spot. So what is that? 595 degrees. That's got to be that's going to land the cannonball in the same spot also, right? You're aiming at 595 degrees, which is the same as 235, with just an extra rotation. You're facing this direction, then you backfire 6, bonk, cannonball lands in the same spot. Finally, last one, fourth way to say that same point. Same as the original R, so again, we're sticking with the backfire. And the angle less than 0. Oh, they want a negative angle this time. They want a negative angle. So before we had 235, so now we just take the 235 and we subtract 360. Because remember, you can always add or subtract 360. So this, and you won't change where you're facing. So if you subtract 360, I think it's going to be minus 125. Is that right? 360 minus 125 degrees minus 125 degrees. That's got to be the same thing, because if you're facing again 235 and then you turn backwards, right, -3, go in the negative direction 360, now you're facing negative 125 degrees, but that's the same spot. It's the same spot. Then you backfire 6, you're going to land the cannonball at the very same spot. So there we go. We found total of 4 ways to say the exact same spot right here in polar coordinates. So that's different than rectangular coordinates, isn't it? With rectangular coordinates, there's only one way to say a point, a spot on the graph. But with polar coordinates, we have several ways, because we can backfire and we can turn more than 360 or negative angles, several ways to say the same spot in polar coordinates.